Yo, JD here, Tyrrell Limitless, and as you can see, back on F1 2020 as always. And like my last video, we are doing another online lobby. But first, thank you to everyone who has used my Boohoo Man code. It is code Limitless, so if you are interested in the code and you like what you see, make sure you do check it out. But moving back to this, reverse grid, I've put myself at the back with many other fast people. This was a very competitive lobby.
Right, damage is off.
And we're using the full setups here. And like with the, I think it was the Silverstone race that I did, I'm going to show pretty much the whole thing because I think there is a lot of things to learn and people seem to really like this format. So starting last, I'm just going to take my time going into Tail 1. I think a lot of people really like to rush into it. And I like to just really just pick people off through their own errors. A lot of side-by-side action. You can see I've already made up 3 positions. Now another 2 positions. So 5 positions already by people just tripping over themselves. And this mainly applies a little bit more in online public lobbies rather than league racing, because league racing people are a little bit more careful, but nonetheless I think this approach is good, knowing when to be aggressive. So going down here, staying to the right hand side, because I know on the outside that's where the most likelihood of danger is. So again, made up 7 positions on this first lap with an element of patience but also an element of commitment, just knowing where to put your car. And I always say try and avoid the racing line when people are going side by side, because that's where they're more than likely going to end up when they're in a half spin. So I always try and position my car in the best place possible. I can see here now these guys are going side by side, so I'm just really just going to let these guys get on with it. Didn't use much ERS in the first lap, but coming off the exit here, using a little bit. And once I see that ERL Rise is not using any, I decide to completely back off. FRA Arch, very fast drivers, going down the inside here. And when you're coming through the field, I try and use people to clear path for me. And this kind of aspect really applies to kart racing. When someone overtakes in front, you follow them through. And that's exactly what I do in open lobbies. When someone's compromised because they're getting overtaken, I try and take advantage of that without using any of the battery or the fuel or power myself. It's just the most efficient way of trying to get through, and I think you'll see that on a number of occasions in this race. So I'm just following FRA Arch at the moment. Had some good battles with him in the past. Very fast driver. And in this lobby I made the grid myself, so all the fast people would be at the back of the grid. So we're all trying to go through together. You can see he's going for a pass here. That's compromised MRC's line, so can't quite go around the outside. Not close enough to go down the inside on this occasion. But again, I think there'll be another example. He gets a bit of a poor exit, so we're going to go around the outside, leave plenty of racing room, trying to get the momentum off the corner, and have to use a little bit of the ERS here. And I can see he stayed committed to it, so I've turned off my ERS because I was confident that I'm probably going to be running a little bit higher downforce him, that I could outbrake him. Managed to do that nicely. I knew in the previous corner that he struggled with the traction as well. So again, he tries to make another attempt, but just trying to avoid using the ERS as much as possible, because round here, excuse me, it's very hard for you to actually reharvest that ERS. So you really have to think of the best times using it. So far, made our way through the field, halfway through the field already, with still almost 90% ERS available. It's going very well. So back on the rear of FRA Arch, and again I'm just going to try and follow him through. Not be able to go do it through here, but you can see that line, guy's line's compromised, so we are just going to take full advantage of that, leave some room on the outside, and we get that move done without using any ERS, which is really the aim of what I'm wanting to do here. So now coming into the last corner, FRA Arch was thinking about going down the inside, kind of been boxed back into me here, so trying to get a good exit. And again, I can see the guys behind are nowhere near me, so I'm not going to use any of the overtake. The guy in the green, he is compromised his line, so he's having to stay very tight. I get a good exit. He doesn't have any DRS to defend with, so I was thinking about going to the right, and now I'm just going to go down the inside. So now I'm being a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more committed when needed. And now we have got that move done. So
good progress.
Really good progress, like I said there. And we're still up towards the 90% of the ERS mark, which is exactly what you need, because there are a couple of fast guys who are still ahead of us who started a bit further up. So right here now, I'm just going to try and stay with FRA Arch as much as possible. You can see I'm keeping it in lean mix just to keep my engine nice and cool, and then back up to rich when I feel I just need a little bit more off the punch, but I felt quite confident in my pace. So go back into here, go up it back down to standard, try and keep it as cool and keep the tyres in check as much as possible, because tyre wear and tyre temps are definitely a big factor going around this track. So coming off this last corner, I think a lot of people would be tempted to use the ERS here, but you can see here again, we're not using anything at all as Arch sets the fastest lap of the race, and you can see with the slipstream and the DRS combined, we're able to close it nicely. He goes out a little bit out wide, so I think the tyres are already starting to become a bit of a factor, and that's where definitely your driving style and your setup choice starts to come more into play, which I definitely focused more towards the end of the stints when I'm driving. That's where I'm normally my strongest against my competition, so I felt quite comfortable staying in his DRS here. But coming through the chicane, I could tell he's pushing quite hard, and as we enter chicane, a very, very difficult chicane, but on the exit of it, he...
Pronto, Gualteri?
Hello?
Oh dear.
And oh dear indeed, that curb can really, really catch you out. And this game in general, the curbs are just very, very random in how they react to the car. Sometimes they drag you in, sometimes they spit you out, sometimes they appear to be very smooth. It's really, really unpredictable, and he has lost a lot of time doing that. So we've gained another position again through someone's error. Now we're coming up to the 6th place man here, not quite within his DRS zone. So again, I'm not going to use any of the ERS here, and you might be thinking, you've got so much. It's because I might need it towards the end of the race, and again, it's very, very difficult to save anything around this track, and so I'm not going to use it here because I felt confident that I was going to get in his DRS zone towards the end of the lap. So we started the lap about 1.4 behind, already made up about 3 tenths, and I suspect through this middle sector I will be making up even more time. So if we keep an eye on that delta up ahead, you can see we're just gaining quite a lot of time now, so we're just much quicker in the corners, just much more confident around this track. We've got BHRL Jesse up ahead of him, who races with on quite a few occasions. He is a very, very fast driver, so it's good that we have this ERS in ammunition, and we need to really rely on our raw speed without it to try and make some inroads. But you can see here, we're into that 6/10 window, which I always talk about, where the slipstream really starts to come to effect. So I'm just trying to get as close as I possibly can going through these last 2 corners, but he actually still has some good speed in him at the moment. So coming off this corner, I'm going to have to sacrifice a bit of the ERS now. Let's see how fast he is in the straight line. So we'll go use it. Let's see if he defends, and yes, he's made it very clear that he wants to defend. Not quite sure which direction he wanted to go, so I was a little bit indecisive on my part. On the exit here again, we're just going to use the DRS and the ERS, and you can see in the end it's going to be quite a simple move. Just braking late just to make sure we get that move done. And now we are behind the 2 main people in this race. So we've made some really good progress by, again, some combination of decisiveness, patience, and being aggressive, and just using our fuel and ERS very smartly. So you can see the gap is about 4.3 seconds between myself and BHRL Jesse. We're just going to stay aboard for a little bit just to see what that kind of gap is, because I do suspect that he has probably used a little bit more ERS than me throughout here. But we get I think that's our first track invalidation, so we have to be careful. Very easy track to get a warning on. You can see he's already got a 3-second time penalty, and the gap at the moment is coming down very slowly as GSR FH444, sounds like a barcode, has actually pitted because the soft tyres go off very, very quickly. It's just he sets the fastest lap, in fact. So just confirming, he definitely has some speed. And again, I felt quite confident that he was probably using a little bit more ERS than I was. As I get my second time in validation here, but you can see the gap is now starting to come down here, and now ERS has pretty much stayed exactly the same. So I really want to keep this in animation as much as I possibly can, and really see this as an opportunity to see how much raw speed it's got. So coming the exit here, using a little bit of the burst of ERS, constantly in the high 16s, with only using about 5% per lap. So the gap started about 3.8 this lap, and I suspect on this lap now, from looking back at this footage, he didn't use much on this lap itself. So the gap's still remaining at 3.8, but I think again this is where the setup really comes into effect, where the tyre wear really kicks in and just a mechanical grip starts to really fail on the car. So I made up about a 10th going into sector 1 and making up almost another 10th itself before he gains it back again. You can see here in this middle sector we are gaining quite a substantial amount of time. So this is what I feel the pace was really like when he is not using any of the ERS here. And you can see again making up another 2 to 3 tenths. So we're driving very well at this stage. Coming through the sector split, we're 0.0 down, so very consistent, and the gap is 3.3 seconds.
Tires go off.
So we made up about 5 seconds here. So that really shows to me, when I'm looking at that gap, that we definitely have more raw speed than him. So I was thinking about going a little bit later in this race, but I really wanted to beat him on track. So this lap here, I'm not going to push that hard. You can see I didn't even use any of the ERS going on to the main straight, because I don't want him to think that I'm pushing very, very hard, because sometimes when you push really hard, it actually scares your competition into pitting to try and get an undercut to you. So I know it sounds crazy for me to say, but I'm intentionally not trying to catch him that quickly here. I'm just trying to conserve all my ERS, and I'm going to go for quite an aggressive undercut, because I could see in the stint I was definitely better on my tyres and ERS management than him. So I'm going to go for an aggressive undercut where I should be able to gain minimum
on the strategy,
about 2 seconds, where that should put me in the DRS window. So I think when you're racing people, you really have to try and understand where they are quicker, where you are stronger, and play to your strengths and play against their weaknesses, as brutal as that sounds as well. I think that's just something a lot of people don't really think about. They just think about going as fast as they possibly can all the time, not about the long game, which I know probably sounds very, very boring, me going over all the time, but that's why you see so many people who are so fast in qualifying. They always normally do a very good qualifying performance, but throughout a season they just make too many misjudgments, mistakes, and just are not consistent enough. Whereas no, it'd be good if you win a few races throughout the season, but if your other races are outside the top 6, top 7, or outside the points sometimes, then the guy who finishes in 4th every time probably has more chance of winning the whole thing. So it's just something you really have to think about. And right here now, since I've gone for this aggressive undercut, I've gone very, very hard on this outlap and used a little bit of the ERS as well at the same time. So the benefit of saving that means I can really, really deploy it. And I know that he's probably going to pit the next lap now, because he's seen that I've pitted. And the gap is about 3.3 seconds coming to pits. Let's see what it's going to be now. And I felt confident that I could stay with him again because of how he was dealing with the tyres in the first stint. And you can see we've gained quite a lot of time. About 2.4, 2.6 seconds in the end. And now we are within this DRS zone. We're out P3 on the track. No pressure from behind. And he has got GSR, who is on the slower medium tyre, up ahead of him. So right here, I don't have to use any of the ERS. Once again, I'm just going to follow him, keep it in lean just to make sure I have enough fuel going towards the end of the race, but also more importantly, just to make sure my engine is nice and cool. Very easy to overheat when you're following another car. So I'm just going to stick behind him, and let's see when he overtakes GSR here. So he's not going to do it here, but on the exit I think he's going to get a very good run I'm just going to just see what happens. So on the exit, that's compromised his line, and the thing we spoke about before, I'm going to take advantage of that. Being a little bit aggressive here, just being a bit more committed, a bit more decisive. I want to make sure that there's no way he's going to put a car between himself and me, so he could potentially use his fresher tyres to get out of the DRS zone. I just made sure I followed him through there. And as we discussed previously, just using other cars to your advantage ahead of you when you're going through the traffic is a very, very underestimated thing. I think a lot of people try and always force the move themselves and use the overtake whenever they see the opportunity. But you've really got to think ahead. And in that scenario, I knew I had to follow him, because if I didn't get the DRS on BHL or Jesse, then that could have been very bad for me. And here, right here now, I think he's trying to get out of my DRS zone. I made a bit of a mistake going into this corner, but I can tell he's pushing very, very hard here. So all I have to do is just try and stay within his DRS. And then again, towards the end of the stint, this is where I feel I will be at my strongest compared to him. And again, I can see this middle sector, he's definitely pushing very, very hard. So if I can keep with him, really just try and drain him down, make him use his ERS, make him use his tyres. Although I have the older tyres, I felt confident with my surf and driving style that it would definitely start to bounce out towards the end of the race. So again, not using any of the overtake button, although we were only 2 tenths away from losing the DRS. I just felt very, very confident down this main straight that I would gain some time. He goes out wide again. We get another benefit of the DRS here, and we are just going to literally just stay.
Oh, his light's flashing.
Just stay behind him, and I can see here, as you hear me saying, his light is actually flashing, so that's confirming that he has been using
there we go.
quite a lot of the ERS. You don't think you can see it on the screen here, but he has not got much ERS to play with here. So I know I'm in the box seat. I've got about 50% more ERS than him, and in reality, unless he's running a very low downforce set, which I don't think he is, because I'm gaining quite a bit of speed on the straight, he's only really going to be able to save about 5% of laps. So he would need another 10 laps before he can save what I can do. So I'm just trying to look after my fuel, trying to look after my tyre wear, tyre temps as much as possible. And you can see already the softs go off quite quickly around this circuit. You can see already going through the corners, we're just definitely gaining quite a bit of time in him. So there's no point to make this overtake early where I have to take a risk with my ERS or the fuel.
So look, I'm not even going to use any ERS, and look how much faster I'm in this.
And yeah, again, you can see
he's got no
since
ERS
he's down on that power, his red light's flashing, his straight line speed is going to be, he's going to be a good tenth or two slower down that straight than he would do normally. So again, all I need to do is just make sure I'm within about 6 tenths, 7 tenths of him coming off that last corner, and I know we're going to be in a really, really good position. But again, staying on board this whole time. So again, please let me know if you want me to skip ahead to some bits. But I always personally enjoy watching a driver's full on board, just to understand their thoughts and just seeing their full perspective of exactly what is going on. So I'm starting to feel here right now in my head that I can see, as the longer this race goes on, the closer I'm getting to him as well, closer the tyre wear is starting to equal out between us. And I can also see his red light is flashing, just starts to go off and on as he goes on the power here. As you see down this main straight, see we're actually quite close on this occasion. Don't think we're going to use any ERS here, but you can see his red light is now flashing, and we'll be able to see that delta. It's coming down very, very quickly, about over 2 or 3 attempts. You can actually go semi-defensive this time into tail 1, but I'm not very interested in overtaking him here. I always think if you can see your opponent is very low in the ERS, it's probably good to try and overtake him with 2 laps to go rather than a lap to go. So try to overtake him without using any of the ERS, make him use his, and if you're successful, you should have enough to defend with on the next lap, as you will have more and he'll be in the dirty air. Whereas if it's not successful, at least you've actually drained all of his ERS as well. I think a good example of that was
like 5%
Tyrrell Bahrain when I was against Martin. Tried it on the penultimate lap, was unsuccessful. and then on the last lap he was just an absolute sitting duck. So really it's just a win-win, but always try and use the least amount as possible unless you really have to. But now we're coming into this penultimate lap, so this is where I was thinking about doing this overtake. So I'm trying to stay as close as I possibly can. Again, no threat from behind whatsoever here, so getting a little bit of a compromise on. Not a great exit of this occasion, but I know he's going to be so down the straight and nothing to defend with, so you can see the straight line speed is really lacking. So I'm going to turn off the ERS now. I'm going to try and make this stick around the outside, which I do. He actually makes a bit of contact with me, and on the exit he actually loses the car, and that's unfortunate because I felt like I did give him quite a lot of room, which I know a lot of people comment when I do league races that I don't give a lot of people room, which
I'll let him back through.
Is true to a degree, but what I try and do is I just try and really deter them from... I offer them a very small gap, and I usually let them make the decision if they want to risk themselves or not. That's the way I normally kind of operate. But on this occasion here, I don't think I did anything wrong, but I wanted a bit more of a battle
going now.
because he's been driving really well. So I felt a little bit too confident that I should be able to get him, because I know on the straight line he's really going to be suffering. But now my tyres are actually starting to go off here. So again, I need to be as close as I possibly can. So go for his responsible corner, try and carry as much minimum apex speed as possible, trying to take a nice wide approach coming into this corner. We're definitely close to where on the previous lap, so we're going to use the overtake once again, put it into rich mix here. And when we go turn off the overtake, so we're going to overtake now. We're doing a little bit of a double to left hand side. He tries to go around the outside here. Just get your elbows out ever so slightly a little bit, which is fine. Sometimes it's what I try and do is push people on the curb a little bit whilst they still want to stay on the track, because then they just won't get good traction. Didn't really need to do that on this occasion. And now you're about to see the power of having even more ERS on the last lap, because he's in a dirty air. See, the gap is about 4 tenths at the moment here, but we're just going to turn up the ERS for this last sector, and you can see the gap is already 8 tenths of a second. And I think this is again just really the case of him suffering with the battery power, us keeping our tyres in check. And you can see already again it's 9 tenths now. Coming off here, we're going to use a little bit of the ERS, and that has pushed us up to 1 second gap, so we're already out of the DRS zone. And yeah, this is why you need to be patient, particularly on tracks where tyre tips are very crucial, because you can see my tyres are even starting to go off now already. As we come off the last corner, we have done the reverse grid masterclass of 20th to first place. I really hope you enjoyed that. I really hope you like these format of these videos and you've learned something at the same time as well. So thank you so much for support on my channel, and I will catch you very soon. Peace.